Suga Sean versus Petr Yan. Guys, what does a win look like in that fight? I feel like these are vastly different fronts that both guys are fighting on. And by example, I don't see a scenario where Petr Yan becomes a number one contender, gets to fight for a championship if Aljo remains champion. A lot of ifs on that, but I don't think that I think they're going to see some parity. At the same time, I feel if Suga Sean wins, Suga Sean's next fight will be for a world championship regardless of who's holding that belt. Now, I didn't just say anything groundbreaking for you. I wasn't attempting to. I'm just talking about your approach to a fight is very relevant. So us, the viewer, will try to decide who's got more pressure on them. We'll try to who's got the experience, right? We'll look for lots of different things, but we'll also use motivation as a key. If one guy can have all of his dreams come true if this one just goes right, versus another guy has just got to make sure that he gets a win so that he can move on and maybe have an opportunity to make all of his dreams come true. I mean, I think that we would at least guess that the motivation would be different. We could also assume with that motivation comes a different level of pressure. So I don't know if we're all going to come to the conclusion that this is better for Suga Sean. I'm just sharing with you as we talk about it, and I want to go a little bit further. What is a win for Sean? Sean O'Malley is a big star in the weight class. He's a big star in the sport. He has beautiful placement on cards. Placement on cards is far more important than a ranking. And Sean has those things, but he said that he doesn't deserve them. This has been a narrative. Sean doesn't fight anybody. Sean doesn't fight the best guys. Now, his last opponent with the eye poke was one hell of a tough guy. And of course, Chito Vera has gone on since and is now ranked number 3 in the world. But this was still the story around Sean. Well, the buck stops when you take on a former world champion. But you do have to live up to that to some degree. If the former world champion walks over you, then the narrative that you didn't earn your spot and you had an easy way here is going to live on. But I am asking you, what is a win for Sean? I mean, if Sean is just against the narrative about him, then all he has to do is go out there and compete, right? I'm asking. What if Sean wins a round? What if it's a close fight? This is a 29-28. Sean loses. It goes to Yan, but Sean won a round. If Sean wins a round against the number one ranked guy who was the world champion 1 calendar year ago, wouldn't that take a pretty big dent into the discussion that Sean doesn't fight anybody tough and Sean doesn't have the skills? Wouldn't that be true? Now, here's another scenario. Sean's coach, Tim Welsh, came out, and Tim said that Sean has the ability to go right through Petr Yan. I believe he used the term manhandle him. But the point is going to be a 15-minute fight. It's going to be 15 minutes of Sean winning. And that really does come down to a very basic concept that you will always hear fight guys talking about, which has to do with range. Right? You're always going to get a fight guy that knows something about fighting. He's always going to throw out a few buzzwords. Range is going to be one of them. Reach is going to be one of them. Get inside, and he's going to say something about footwork. He doesn't have the foggiest idea what any of them mean, and he can't give you an example of anybody that's ever done it, but they're going to talk about it. This will be my first time ever that I've used the word range, because I haven't have to because I'm not lazy. At any rate, I'm going to use it here because Yan had a hard time with long range, and I'm just giving the example of Sandhagen. Sandhagen, round 1, was very hard for Yan. Sandhagen kept him at the end of the punches. Yan wasn't able to get inside. But I left with a massive respect for Yan because even though he took those bumps, he weathered the storm, he figured it out on the fly, and he did get inside. Sean O'Malley is one of the few guys that has a reach advantage but knows how to use it. And to Tim's point, if Sean is to come out and start finding Yan early on, he just has to repeat that. If he comes out, Suga Sean, and he wins the first 30 seconds, it's not a matter if he has to win the next 14 minutes and 30 seconds. It's a matter that he has to duplicate those 30 seconds over and over again. And it would be very interesting if Sean did control him. It's not as though there's going to have to be some masterful game plan. Keep him outside, touch him. When he gets inside, move, don't let him touch you. Very easy for me to say, very hard to do. But I thought that Tim brought up a very good point. Tim is one of the great minds in the sport. I've been friends with Tim for a meaningful period of time, but I was training partners with Tim. Tim and these guys, they used to jump in a car and they would just drive around the country. They drive, they come to this gym and spend a week, and they come up here and spend a week, and Team Quest was always one of the places they would stop off at. But he had an incredible mind. Like, we'd get done with practice and everybody's headed to the locker room, and we would stop. Whoa, Tim, come back here. Earlier, you were doing this, show us. He was a guy that was going town to town to try to get information, but he had it. He was already more advanced than we were. He understood the sport different. He had different setups. He had different techniques. So he came in to be the student, but he would leave as the teacher. I was so glad when he finally settled down and started his own gym. But he's a real mastermind of the sport. And if he's saying that Sean can keep Petr Yan at the end of his shots, that he can stay on his feet, that he can out-condition him, that he's not going to get frustrated, I mean, it's somebody that I'm going to listen to. And I don't know if it's as complicated as that. I don't know that Sean has to win the fight. It's always good to win fights. I'm just sharing for you to capture people's attention, to look be impressive, to earn your spot on the main card, to stop the idea that this guy hasn't got in there with anybody tough. I'm not sure Sean has to get his hand raised. His coach is talking about him dominating the fight. And it's interesting to me. I mean, that is a match. 2022 is unlike any year that we have ever seen. If 2022 Dana White got a meeting with 2007 Dana White, 2007 Dana White kicks 2022 Dana out of the office. He's not going to agree with him. 2010 Dana, 2015 Dana, 2022 Dana is not going to agree with 2022 at all. But something extremely fascinating is happening. And when this year is done, we're going to have to ask ourselves one really big question. Who came the furthest? I'll give you an example. For last year, so 2021, no two fighters skyrocketed their name and their appeal and their placement and the way that the fans were talking about them like Belal Muhammad and Sean Strickland. The previous year, you didn't know what a Belal was and you didn't know who Sean Strickland was. But those two, they go to main events. This year is very interesting. I mean, does Khamzat Chimaev have that all locked up? Because he did. It was all Chimaev. Every headline was Chimaev. Anytime I wanted to do a piece and I wanted you guys to listen, all I had to do was put Chimaev. Put his name in the thumbnail. True. Very true story. Chimaev is still red hot. But what happens if Suga Sean wins? And moreover, what happens if Khamzat wins? I mean, Khamzat's another one of these guys that I just keep hearing about. I can't turn around without hearing this name. What about Bo Nickel? Just for example. I mean, this year really is unlike any other year. I could even throw Tai Tuivasa in there to some degree. Tai was pretty over last year as well. But to some degree, but these are names that you never thought that you would hear. I mean, I had to throw Bo Nickel on that list. Bo Nickel has not ever fought within the UFC. But there's massive opportunity being formed right now. And guys are grabbing it and guys are running with it. What are they going to do? What character, what gimmick, what skills, what placement, what headlines, what social media, and what are they going to do? Vince McMahon is very well known for telling his guys and only promising them one thing. I'm only going to give you one thing ever. It's not going to be money. It's not going to be a time. I'm going to give you one thing. I'm going to give you an opportunity. Whatever you do with that, we're going to live with the results and juxtapose that against the other guys they give an opportunity to. And the top 10 guys are going to move on to WrestleMania. Pretty straightforward. And even though those words have never been spoken in MMA, it's the exact same scenario. And who is going to make the most of it? 2022 is unlike any other year. And as it starts winding down, one of the many questions that we are going to ask ourselves is, who was the rising star? And we've still got a few fights to go. I mean, you want to talk about rising stars and you think maybe I just identified them and you're going to start comparing those. What if Pereira beats Adesanya? Pierre might come in on a 6 and shut the book on this whole conversation. 2022 really has been a lot of fun.